Let's talk about Trey Lance. Again, the
Oi.
story out of OTAs is forget the last 2 years. Whatever happened, happened, but he's making progress now and he's on the right track now and everything's going to work out. But that does raise some questions. Like, first, we know
Okay.
that this guy, Trey Lance, had mechanical issues. They've sort of acknowledged it and he's fixing them. Did Kyle Shanahan know that Trey Lance needed mechanical fixes when he drafted him? What do you think?
Okay. Well, that's a big question. And there are several questions that we're going to ask. Did Kyle know? And the mechanical issue, you had a guy talking about it yesterday, and he was very articulate and was very good. But in a nutshell, throwing in baseball and in football comes from your lower body.
Correct.
It's all the power comes from your legs and your hips and your
Hips.
tush and
Yeah.
and all of that. And
Yeah.
you have to be firmly grounded. Iggy and I know a former offensive coordinator. When Iggy, the very first time that Trey Lance threw in a practice, Iggy put up some video of it. He called Iggy and said, he's got a problem, I'll tell you right now. He doesn't use his
Yeah.
lower body. So the point is, it was visible to someone who
Right.
knew his ass from his elbow.
Right.
I'm not only saying, did Kyle know it? I'm saying Kyle didn't see what was there. I don't think he's a good quarterback developer because he doesn't understand throwing. He understands catching and running, but not throwing. The guy we know saw it in 10 minutes. I don't think when they drafted him, Kyle had a clue that this kid had a serious mechanical problem. That's what I think.
Yeah, I agree. And like again, he understands catching and running and throwing,
Yeah.
like catching and running and route running. But that's wide receiver skill sets. Like a quarterback throwing, it's almost like a baseball player. I played baseball a long time. You work on throwing, you work on hitting. Those are repeatable motions you do over and over and over again, and you make very slight tweaks, and it's really difficult to master it. And I don't think Kyle Shanahan knows the first thing about those, about the grammar of that pursuit. I don't think he knows because he never did it.
That's right. I feel, this guy you had on talking about quarterbacks said that Kyle is the best head coach in the league. I don't agree with that.
I don't agree.
He
with that.
doesn't know how to do quarterbacks. That's a blind spot. So let's move on logically. Let's say,
well, real quick before we move on, I just want to stay here for one more second. I asked Kyle Shanahan, like, Kyle said that Trey Lance improved the base of his throwing at the Dwight Clark Memorial event. So I asked Kyle a couple of days ago, well, what do you mean by that? And he was like, oh, it just means that he doesn't get his feet kind of splayed so that he's always in a proper passing position and he's not looking to scramble. It's like, well, yeah, that's part of it. That's a very small part of it. But what about all the other things he's working on? I just don't think Kyle Shanahan could really explain throwing mechanics in the level that Austin Carter Samuels did yesterday on my show. I don't think he could do it.
Not only couldn't he explain it, I don't think he understands it.
Correct.
Iggy, I used to be a college English teacher and a college creative writing teacher. I was pretty good at it. I couldn't go in and teach physics.
No.
It's like this guy knows certain things, but when it comes to teaching quarterbacks, it's physics, and he never took it, and he's bullshitting. That's what
he knows how to beat. He knows how to beat quarters coverage. He knows how to use motion to create an advantage before the snap, but he doesn't know how to evaluate throwing mechanics or fix them.
No. So let's move on logically. Let's say Kyle was astute enough to see that Trey Lance had a serious mechanical problem. I don't think he was astute enough, but let's say he was. Why do you draft him there? Why do you trade all those picks and draft a guy with a serious problem? If you knew what was going on, you'd say, he's a gorgeous athlete. He's a nice kid. I don't want a project. Certainly not. Iggy, what did they take him? Number 3?
Yeah, and they traded up to get him. They essentially spent 3 years worth of first round picks plus third round pick on him.
So you spend all of that on a guy who has a serious mechanical problem.
Yeah.
That is not easy to fix.
Yeah.
So what happens
on a win now team, and he's 20.
On a win now team. So what I think is they drafted him. He didn't even know he had a problem.
Yeah.
And then he got him, and the throws were wobbling and weren't coming out right, and he had arm fatigue, and Kyle didn't know why.
No.
Let's say He did know why, but he didn't. Then you say, okay, you've spent all this draft capital to get him. What's your plan?
Yeah.
Because you got a guy who's a very good athlete, but he's not NFL ready. What's your
Right.
plan?
Yeah.
Was there a plan? His
Well,
plan was go out, jump in the deep water, and see how you do.
yeah, absolutely. And also, he was working with some off-season quarterback coaches, John Beck and Quincy Avery. They didn't seem to get results, and now he's not working with them anymore. So if that was part of the plan, like, hey, we want you to go see John Beck. Well, that didn't work. So why is he on plan B? Like, we'll get to that in a minute, but whatever plan they had didn't work.
Yeah.
And the only reason you could draft him is like, okay, if you saw it, like, oh, we can fix this. John Beck is perfect. He'll fix this. I guess not.
Also, I think they didn't understand what the problem was, and they said, we'll send it to some quarterback guru. He'll diagnose the problem and fix it because we don't know what's going on. That's
Right.
where I think he's at.
Right. And what was interesting was the quarterback guru I had on yesterday, Austin Carter Samuel, said, well, it's possible that John Beck looked at Trey Lance and said, I have to make wholesale changes with you, but I'm afraid to do that because you might get even worse. And, the Niners, I haven't gotten the license from the Niners to do that with you. Whereas now the Niners are all in with Brock Purdy. Trey Lance goes to a different coach. That coach can say, hey, man, you either do this or it's over for you. What do you want to do? So maybe that's why he's all of a sudden making wholesale changes. But I don't understand why this took to year 3. It didn't need to come to this.
He is improving a little, but your expert said he's only half the way there.
Right. And again, we're like, he's half the way through his rookie contract. Like, how did it have such a delay? And keep going.
Well, my next point is, why do they have to outsource teaching of quarterbacks?
Yeah.
I mean, did Bill Walsh outsource Steve or Joe? No. I mean, who's the quarterback coach there now?
Brian Griese.
Griese. Isn't he supposed to know this stuff? He was a quarterback.
He played the position. Yeah.
Isn't he supposed to say, hey, stay on the ground?
Yeah.
Don't be so high up.
Yeah.
Don't be an arm thrower. Be a body
Here's
thrower.
A drill. Here's a drill to fix it. Here's a drill.
And this guy couldn't do it, so they had to outsource it to 2 different people, 2 different groups. What does that say about the 49er coaching of quarterbacks? And this is one of the richest quarterback traditions in the league. There was Y.A. Tittle, there was John Brody, there was Joe, there was Steve, there was Jeff Garcia, and now they don't seem to know jack about how to handle or diagnose or fix a quarterback. It blows my mind, Iggy.
Yeah, and they keep saying stuff like, well, it's not really our job to, like fix his mechanics, like that's sort of his job, or we don't have the time and the resources. Well, Bill Walsh did it. He wasn't outsourcing the Joe Montana project to someone else. He wasn't outsourcing the Steve Young project to someone else. Andy Reid developed Patrick Mahomes on his own. Mike McCarthy, who no one respects, developed Aaron Rodgers, completely overhauled his throwing mechanics, had him throwing completely differently by his 3rd year in the league. He did it. So guys, people can do it. And it seems like if you can do it, that means that you're probably a really good coach and you have a very valuable skill set. Kyle has a lot of good things going for him, but I don't think he can do this.
He hasn't done it. And then, Iggy, it brings us to, I think, our final point, if you don't mind, on quarterbacks, what his philosophy is. I believe his philosophy is, I don't know my S or my L about quarterbacks. I'm going to screw this up. So last year, they were in a pickle. They didn't even want Jimmy Garoppolo. They didn't even let him practice. He was like the odd man out on another field. Oh, Jimmy's hanging around. Maybe he'll save our ass. So they got Jimmy. Then Jimmy got hurt, and then they had the last guy in the draft who was hanging around. And they said, oh, maybe he'll save our ass. So Kyle's philosophy is, I go with the quarterback who's hanging around.
Yeah.
God help me. I need a quarterback who's hanging around.
Yeah, the hanging around plan.
Hanging around plan.
So whoever the starting quarterback on the 49ers is whoever saved Kyle Shanahan's ass most recently.
Yes, that's his.
That's it.
That's his philosophy.
That's it. And they try to act like once that quarterback comes out of nowhere, exceeds expectations, and saves his ass, he's like, oh, well, we saw him coming all along, and that's our plan. That's what we're going with from now on. It's like,
bullshit.
Nah, until he gets hurt and the next guy saves your ass, and then that's your starting quarterback. And it could be Darnold. It could be Trey. It could be Brandon freaking Allen. Whoever saves your ass is the guy you love.
And
True.
whoever saves your ass is the guy you never developed. He was just
Right.
hanging around, and you didn't
Hanging
even
around.
care about him. And
Yeah,
and
you
then
spent all your efforts on this guy, and all your efforts were counterproductive.
right. And what happens is you get on your knees and you take your hands and you pray and you say, God,
Thank you, Brock.
please give me a savior because I don't know what I'm doing.
I don't know what I'm doing. So it's like, all right, well, the last pick in the draft is going to exceed expectations and save your season in your ass, but you're not going to win a Super Bowl. If you want to win a Super Bowl, you actually have to finish this project that you undertook, and that's on you. I can't do it for you. Well, the other thing that's interesting to me here is that we talked about they outsourced the throwing teaching. Yeah, and he's on his like third personal offseason coach. And this guy, so Matt Barrows broke the story that he interviewed Jeff Christensen. He interviewed Jeff Christensen, who Trey's been working out with this offseason, the new coach. And Barrows asked him, well, who linked you up with Trey? And Christensen wouldn't say. He's like, I respectfully decline to answer that question. To me, if the Niners put him in contact with Trey, you would say that there's nothing to hide. The fact that maybe they didn't means like that's kind of like, did Trey do this on his own? Jeff Christensen also coached Jimmy Garoppolo for a long time back in high school. Did Jimmy on the way out say, hey, Trey, they're screwing you. Don't go to their guy. Go to my guy. Wouldn't that be quite interesting?
Whoa.
Wouldn't that be very interesting? Hey, dude, they don't have your best interest in heart. Please, believe me. Go to Jeff. Go to Jeff. He'll help you. Wouldn't that be amazing? A little bit of leadership on the way out from Jimmy Garoppolo. Thank you, Jimmy.
You know what also would be amazing? If Jimmy plays better for the Raiders than he did for the Niners.
That would be amazing. Did you hear about Jimmy today, though? Did you hear about the news?
No.
You might have missed this. He had additional surgery on his foot in March. He failed his physical with the Raiders. They signed him anyway. He's out indefinitely, not at OTAs.
Really?
So the Jimmy Garoppolo experience continues, and now it's the Raiders' problem.
Iggy, I didn't know that. This is news to me.
But it has implications for the Niners because the Niners were adamant that his foot had healed properly, that he was close to coming back to playing, that he didn't need an additional surgery, and they were wrong again. So Jimmy needed 2 surgeries to come back from his broken foot. Trey needed 2 surgeries to come back from his broken ankle. Remember, he had an additional surgery in December. What's going on in Santa Clara? I hate to come down on the doctors and stuff, but whatever the process is over there is not working out so great.
Yeah, and they at the end of the season in the playoffs, they were saying they were sort of pushing Jimmy to be ready to play when clearly now he wasn't. So maybe there's also, Kyle is a desperate quarterback coach because we say he doesn't know what he's doing. Maybe part of his desperation is pushing guys too soon. And I'm saying I don't know that for a fact, Iggy. I
think it's possible. What's happening with Brock now? What are we hearing Kyle say about Brock? Oh, he's going to be with the expectation he'll be there for week 1.
Iggy, if he's there for week 1, they're going to get him killed.
I agree. I really hope that doesn't happen.
I don't want that to happen to that kid. He's such a good story and seems like such a nice young man. I hope that someone is looking out for his interest.
Let's stick with what you said before, though, that Kyle's desperate and he pushes these quarterbacks back on the field too soon. Remember 2020. So 2019, they go to the Super Bowl. They had the opportunity after that. They lose to get Tom Brady. They don't get him. They come back. Jimmy Garoppolo gets hurt. Week 2, like Trey last year, okay? So he gets hurt. He injures his ankle. They push him to come back. He comes back week 5. He gets hurt again. Then he shuts himself down, misses about 10 weeks with an ankle injury. I think Kyle Shanahan thought he should have came back and played through it at the very end of the season, and then they get Trey Lance. I bet it was because of that. He's like, oh, he's not. He doesn't love football, or he's not tough. I don't know, man. Maybe you just push these guys back too soon, and someone has to stand up to you. Yeah.
Again, I always say there is someone. Kyle needs an older person to ask him all the hard questions. He needs an older person in his staff to hold up the mirror to him and say, this is what you're doing. Let's talk about it.
He thinks he has that guy. He thinks it's his dad, but it's not. It's not.
You can't have your dad do that.
No, he won't hold the mirror to you. No, you can't. We don't hold the mirror up to each other. We don't.
Because I love you too much.
Yeah.
You really suck. You really suck, but I can't tell you.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it.